The food hit her like an insult you could wear. Sauce spread across the front of her white suit in a slow, ugly bloom, and for one sharp second the whole room forgot how to breathe. Forks paused midair. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. Even the soft music in the background felt like it turned down, like the band could sense something had broken. It wasn't an accident. Not even close. The sound that followed wasn't an apology. It was laughter. A quick, careless laugh that came from the woman seated beside the boy, the kind of laugh that slices without needing a knife. The boy leaned back in his chair like he had just tossed a joke onto the table instead of disrespect. He was young, dressed like old money, hair neat, eyes bright with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. His smirk stayed in place as if it had been practiced. And there she stood. A black woman in a room built by billionaires. Calm. Composed. Still. Her eyes didn't dart around searching for help. Her hands didn't fly up in panic. She didn't snap. She didn't beg. She didn't shrink. She just stood there with sauce on her sleeve, like the stain was on them, not her. Like she had seen this kind of cruelty before and decided it would not own her tonight. But the room didn't know what to do with her silence. People understand anger. They understand tears. They understand a scene. But this quiet control? It made them uncomfortable, because it didn't give them a clear role. It didn't give them permission to dismiss her as too emotional. It didn't give them a reason to blame her reaction instead of the insult. The boy shrugged as if he was bored. Relax, he said, voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. It's just food. Just food. Like dignity was something you could wipe off with a napkin. His mother lifted a manicured hand and waved it like she was brushing away smoke. Don't be so sensitive, she said, smiling like she had just said something wise. The father sat beside them, staring at his plate. Not surprised. Not shocked. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that protects power. The kind of quiet that tells you this behavior is normal in their world. And the rest of the room? The donors, the executives, the influencers, the people in diamonds and tailored suits? They did what crowds often do when cruelty happens in expensive places. They looked away. Some stared at their glasses like the reflections inside them were more important than the disrespect unfolding 10 feet away. Some pretended to check their phones. Some gave a quick, uneasy smile, the kind that says, "I'm not part of this," while still staying seated, still staying safe. The ones closest to the family laughed lightly too, like joining in would keep them protected. Because in rooms like this, silence isn't just awkward. It's a currency. And humiliation? Humiliation is entertainment, as long as it's not happening to them. The servers froze. One young waiter held a tray in his hands, eyes wide, feet stuck. Another server took half a step forward as if she wanted to help, then stopped when she saw the mother's expression. The mother didn't even look at the staff, but the message was clear. Don't. Not unless you want to be next. Cameras flashed from somewhere. Maybe a press photographer. Maybe a social media person chasing a moment. But even the flashes felt hesitant, like the camera itself was asking, "Is it safe to capture this?" The woman looked down at the sauce on her sleeve. Slowly. Deliberately. Then she reached for a napkin. Her movements were steady, controlled, almost graceful. She dabbed once. Twice. Not frantic. Not messy. Just enough to keep the stain from spreading. She didn't rush. She didn't fumble. She didn't show panic. She didn't show shame. And that's what made it worse for them. Because her calm exposed their ugliness. The boy's smirk started to wobble, just a little. Not because he felt guilty. No. Because her silence refused to give him the reaction he wanted. He wanted her to explode so he could laugh harder. He wanted her to storm off so he could feel powerful. He wanted the room to see her as the problem. But she wasn't giving him any of that. She looked up. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just slowly, like she was lifting a curtain. Her eyes landed on him. Steady. Quiet. Sharp. The whole table felt it. The people around them felt it too. It was like the air tightened. Like the temperature shifted. Like something invisible stepped into the room and stood behind her. The boy tried to hold his smirk, but her stare was heavy. Not angry. Not pleading. Just present. Just aware. It said, I see you. I see what you think you are. I see what you think I am. And I'm still standing. His mother laughed again, louder this time, trying to break the tension. Oh my goodness, she said, like the whole thing was funny. Like it was harmless. Like she was doing the woman a favor by making it light. She turned slightly toward a woman at the next table and said, Kids, right? As if throwing food at someone's body was just normal teenage behavior. The woman at the next table gave a forced laugh. The kind of laugh that sounds like it hurts to make. But still, nobody said the obvious truth out loud. That this wasn't about food. It was about power. The boy had been raised to believe that he could do whatever he wanted, to whoever he wanted, as long as the room was expensive enough. His mother had been raised to believe that her status made her untouchable. And the room was built to support that belief, brick by brick, check by check, smile by smile. The woman wiped her sleeve one last time. Then she folded the napkin neatly and set it down. She didn't look around for approval. She didn't ask for someone to step in. She didn't demand an apology. She just stood there still. And somehow, that stillness was louder than the mother's laughter. Because deep down, everyone in that room knew something they didn't want to admit. They knew they had witnessed a line being crossed. They knew they had stayed quiet. They knew they had chosen comfort over courage. And now they were trapped inside that choice. A man at a nearby table cleared his throat like he might speak. Then he didn't. A woman adjusted her necklace and looked away. Someone whispered, "Oh wow," under their breath, not in sympathy, but in shock, like they had just watched a disaster unfold and weren't sure if they should clap or pray. The boy leaned forward again, trying to take control of the moment. "Seriously," he said, voice dripping with fake innocence. "You're acting like it's a hate crime or something." His mother chuckled. "Exactly," she said. "People are so dramatic these days." The father finally lifted his eyes, but only for a second. He looked at the woman like she was a problem that needed to go away, not a human being who had just been disrespected. Then he looked down again, like he didn't want his evening ruined by accountability. The woman's lips pressed into a calm line. Not a smile. Not a frown. Just restraint. Then she spoke. Not loudly. Not angrily. But her voice cut through the room in a way laughter never could. "Is this who you are?" she asked quietly. "When you think no one important is watching?" The table went silent again. That question hit different, because it didn't accuse them of being rude. It accused them of being real. It suggested this wasn't a mistake. It was character. The boy blinked. His mother's smile twitched. The people nearby stopped chewing. Even the servers held their breath again. The mother lifted her chin, trying to regain her dominance. "Excuse me?" she said, sharp now, because calm questions scare cruel people more than yelling does. The woman didn't move. "I asked a simple question," she said, still soft. "Is this who you are?" The boy scoffed, but it sounded weaker this time. He glanced around the room, expecting support, expecting laughs, expecting people to join in. But the room was starting to feel different. Not because anyone had suddenly become brave, but because her calm was making them realize something. She wasn't begging to belong there. She belonged. And she knew it. Her eyes drifted across the room for a moment, not searching for help, but measuring the space like she understood it. Like she had been in rooms like this before, not as entertainment, not as an outsider, but as someone who had earned her place. Then she looked back at the boy. And the way she looked at him wasn't anger. It was certainty. The kind of certainty that makes arrogance nervous. Because arrogance depends on one thing to survive. It depends on the belief that the person you hurt can't touch your world. And in that moment, as she stood there with sauce on her sleeve and strength in her eyes, the room started to sense something. Something they didn't yet understand. Something that made that mother's laughter feel suddenly risky. Because the truth is, storms don't announce themselves. They don't warn you. They don't ask permission. They don't care about your money or your last name. They arrive when arrogance is at its loudest. And that laugh? That sharp, careless laugh? It was about to echo far beyond that night. But not in the way they thought. Not at all. And as the woman turned slowly, just slightly, like she was deciding her next move, the room held its breath again, because they could feel it. This was only the beginning. The longer she stayed quiet, the braver he became. Confidence like his doesn't come from courage. It comes from practice. From years of watching people look away. From learning that silence means safety, and money means immunity. He leaned forward in his chair, elbows on the table, eyes fixed on her like she was an object he hadn't finished playing with yet. "So," he said, dragging the word out, pretending curiosity. "What do you do again?" The question floated in the air, thin and sharp. Not loud. Not angry. Just enough to cut. It was the kind of question meant to shrink someone. Meant to remind them that they were being evaluated, judged, measured against a standard they were never meant to pass. She met his eyes and answered. One sentence. Clean. Polite. Professional. No emotion. No explanation. No apology for existing. The mother let out a short scoff, like the answer bored her. "Must be nice," she said, lifting her glass, "to get invited to rooms you don't belong in." Her words landed harder than the food had. Because food stains fabric. Words stain memory. The father didn't react. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He cut into his meal like nothing of value had just been said. And that silence, that calm indifference, was louder than anything else at the table. It was permission. It told the boy, keep going. It told the mother, you're safe. It told the room, this behavior is acceptable here. Around them, the wealth shifted. A man adjusted his cufflinks and looked away. A woman crossed her legs and stared at the stage like the speaker up there might save her from having to choose a side. Someone nearby whispered, "This is awkward," but didn't stand up. Didn't interrupt. Didn't say her name. This was how injustice lived. Not through shouting. Not through chaos. But through comfort. Through people deciding that speaking up was too expensive. She nodded once, small and controlled, then pushed her chair back slightly. "Excuse me," she said. No drama. No announcement. She walked away from the table with steady steps, heels clicking softly against polished floors. Some people watched her go. Some pretended not to. The boy leaned back again, pleased with himself. "See?" he said loudly, making sure people heard. She ran. The mother smiled like she was proud. "Some people just can't handle pressure," she said, shaking her head. Laughter bubbled up from somewhere nearby. Thin. Nervous. But laughter all the same. In the restroom, the door closed behind her with a quiet click. The noise of the gala faded into a dull hum. The lights were brighter here. Honest. Unforgiving. She stepped up to the mirror. For a moment, she just looked. The sauce stain was still there, faint now but visible. A reminder. Her face was calm. Eyes steady. Shoulders squared. She didn't crumble. She didn't let the room into her chest. She breathed in. Slow. Deep. The kind of breath you take when you are done reacting and ready to decide. She had learned this long ago. In boardrooms where people assumed she was the assistant. In meetings where her ideas were repeated by someone else and suddenly praised. In spaces where she had to choose between shrinking and standing firm. She placed her hands on the edge of the sink and leaned forward slightly, meeting her own eyes. "You know who you are," she whispered, not as comfort, but as instruction. She straightened her jacket. Smoothed the fabric. Adjusted her posture until it felt like armor. No tears fell. None were allowed. Because tonight wasn't about embarrassment. It was about exposure. She washed her hands slowly, dried them carefully, and turned back toward the door. Back in the ballroom, the boy was still enjoying himself. He was telling a story now, exaggerating the moment, turning cruelty into comedy. His parents listened with smiles that said they had raised him exactly as intended. "She looked like she'd never been talked to before," he said, laughing. "Like welcome to the real world." The mother laughed louder. The father finally smiled. The room joined in, just enough to stay on the safe side of things. Then the laughter stopped. Because she was back. She didn't slide into her chair. She didn't apologize for leaving. She didn't rush. She stood. Right there. Calm. Centered. Still. The shift was subtle but immediate. People felt it before they understood it. Like a change in pressure before a storm. She rested one hand lightly on the back of her chair and looked at the table. At the boy. At the mother. At the father. "I believe introductions were skipped," she said. Her voice was low. Even. Clear. Not loud enough to demand attention. Quiet enough that people had to lean in. The table went still. The boy blinked, confused. The mother tilted her head, irritation flickering across her face. The father looked up fully now, eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to place something he had ignored before. Around them, nearby tables fell silent. Forks paused. Conversations thinned. Something was happening. She continued unhurried. "That's understandable," she said. "Busy night. Important people. Easy to overlook details." Her eyes moved briefly across the room, not searching, but acknowledging. Like she knew exactly where she stood in this space. The boy shifted in his seat. Okay," he said, trying to laugh it off. "Go ahead." She nodded once. "Thank you." There was no sarcasm in it. No bitterness. Just control. And that control did something dangerous. Because people who mistake privilege for permanence never prepare for calm resistance. They expect anger. They expect fear. They expect retreat. They don't expect preparation. The mother crossed her arms. "Is there a point to this?" she asked, sharp again, trying to reclaim the upper hand. "Yes," the woman replied. "There is." The father's eyes flicked to his wife, then back to the woman standing in front of them. Something in his expression changed. Just slightly. A crack. Recognition, maybe? Or concern. The boy opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. For the first time that night, he wasn't sure what came next. The room leaned forward without realizing it. Bodies angled toward her. Ears tuned in. Phones lowered. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was tension. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't accused them. She hadn't defended herself. She had done something far more unsettling. She had taken control of the moment. "I don't require approval to be here," she said calmly. "But I do believe in clarity." Silence wrapped around the table like a held breath. Her words weren't defiant. They were precise. Measured. Each one placed exactly where it needed to be. This wasn't a reaction. It was a setup. And deep down, whether they wanted to admit it or not, everyone in that room could feel it. Something was about to shift. Because pressure doesn't just break people. Sometimes it reveals diamonds. And as she stood there, steady and unshaken, the family across from her began to realize something they had never considered before. They had been playing with someone who knew exactly who she was. And people who know who they are don't stay small for long. The room waited. So did the truth. And whatever was coming next was going to change the night forever. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam a hand on the table. She didn't ask the room to respect her. She simply spoke her name. And the air changed. It was the kind of change you feel before you understand it. Like a sudden cold draft sliding through a warm room. Like the lights got brighter, not because someone touched a switch, but because truth had entered the space. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then everything moved at once. A man near the stage stiffened so hard it looked like his spine locked. A donor holding a glass paused mid-sip, the rim still hovering near his lips. A woman in pearls blinked twice, fast, like her eyes were trying to clear a bad dream. A board member, the kind of person who always smiled even when they were lying, lost all color in his face. Whispers began to ripple outward, soft at first, then spreading like electricity across silk dresses and tailored suits. Did she just say, "No way. That's her?" The father finally looked up. And when he did, it wasn't with arrogance anymore. It wasn't with boredom. It was with the sudden panic of a man who realizes he's been disrespecting the wrong person. "Wait," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. You're her?" The way he said it told the whole story. He didn't ask, "Who are you?" like she was a stranger. He asked like he already knew exactly who she was. Like her name was a brand. Like her face belonged on paperwork and contracts, not standing in front of him with a stain on her sleeve. She nodded once. No pride. No smile. No victory speech. Just truth. The boy's smirk wavered as if someone had pulled the floor out from under it. His eyes darted around the table, searching for support, searching for laughter, searching for the old reality where his last name could shield him from consequences. But reality was shifting, and it was shifting fast. The mother's laugh didn't just stop. It died. Like a candle snuffed out by a sudden gust. Her mouth was still slightly open, frozen in the shape of arrogance, but no sound came out. Her eyes narrowed, then widened, then narrowed again, like she was trying to fight what she was hearing. The father stood abruptly, chair scraping the polished floor loud enough to make people turn. He opened his mouth, closed it, then spoke again. This is a misunderstanding," he said, the words stumbling out like he was grabbing them from a place he had never needed to use before. She didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She didn't soften herself to make him comfortable. "I was invited here," she said evenly, "because I built something valuable." Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It carried like steel. Silence swallowed the table. Not the awkward silence from before. Not the silence of people looking away. This was different. This was the silence of people realizing they might have just watched someone with power get treated like they had none. And in rooms like this, that kind of mistake is dangerous. Phones lit up like fireflies in the dark. Not because people were bored. Because assistants were being texted. Because names were being checked. Because someone's PR person was already sweating somewhere in the back of the room. A man 2 tables away leaned in and whispered into his friend's ear with urgency. A woman in a designer gown sat straighter, eyes wide. Another guest subtly slid their chair away from the boys' table, like distance itself could protect them from being associated with what just happened. The boy looked down at his own hands, then back up at her, then over at his parents. For the first time that night, he looked unsure. Because he had thought he was humiliating a nobody. But the room was starting to understand she was the kind of person you don't see until you need something. The kind of person who signs deals quietly while others celebrate loudly. The kind of person whose company holds up the invisible bones of big empires. Her business wasn't flashy. It wasn't glamour. It wasn't a brand people posted on social media for fun. It was infrastructure. Logistics. Security. The behind-the-scenes machinery that made billionaire dreams possible. Her company didn't chase rooms like this. Rooms like this chased her. And suddenly, everyone who had stayed silent felt their stomach drop. Because now the question wasn't, why did they treat her like that? The question was, what happens next? The father's face tightened. His eyes flicked around the room, reading the whispers, reading the looks, realizing people were watching him now the way they had watched her earlier. He lowered his voice, trying to sound calm, trying to sound in control. "We didn't realize," he said, like ignorance was a shield. Like not knowing her name excused disrespect. She held his gaze. "You didn't need to realize," she replied, her tone steady. "You didn't need my title to choose decency." That line hit like a slap without a hand. The mother inhaled sharply, offended now, not because she had been cruel, but because she was being confronted. Are you saying my son is indecent? She snapped, trying to twist the story. Trying to make herself the victim. The woman didn't even look at the boy. She looked at the mother. Calm. Controlled. I'm saying the way you laughed, she said. Taught him that cruelty is a family tradition. The mother's face flushed red. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but no words came out that didn't sound ugly. The father stepped forward, hands slightly raised as if he could calm the situation. Let's talk privately, he urged. Please. This isn't. No, she said. One word. Simple. Final. And the way she said it made his shoulders drop just a fraction. Like he had forgotten what it felt like to be told no. This isn't a misunderstanding, she continued, her voice still low but unshakable. This is clarity. That word clarity landed like a verdict. Because clarity means there's no hiding behind confusion. No hiding behind. He's just a kid. No hiding behind. It was just a joke. No hiding behind money or status. Clarity says this is who you are, and now everyone can see it. Power shifted at that table, but not in a flashy, movie-style way. Not with music swelling or people clapping. It shifted quietly. Like a crown slipping. Like a door closing. Like a tide turning. The boy's eyes widened as he finally understood what his parents had always protected him from. Consequences. He looked at his father with panic. Looked at his mother with confusion. Looked back at the woman with something he had not felt all night. Fear. Not fear of her yelling. Not fear of her fighting. Fear of what her calm meant. Because people like her didn't need to scream to destroy you. They just had to decide. And he could feel it. The whole room could feel it. That she was deciding. Her gaze drifted across the room, not like she was seeking approval, but like she was measuring the room's spirit. She saw the people who had laughed. The ones who had looked away. The ones who had frozen. The ones who suddenly wanted to seem supportive now that her name had weight. She saw them all. And then she looked back at the family in front of her. I came here to support a charity, she said. Not to prove my worth. The father swallowed hard. His voice came out softer. We can fix this, he said quickly. We can make it right. Whatever you want. The boy flinched at his father's desperation. The mother's jaw tightened. She wanted to stay proud, but pride starts to shake when it realizes it might cost you everything. The woman's expression didn't change. Because dignity doesn't negotiate with disrespect. It only sets boundaries. And as the whispers grew louder around the room, as assistants leaned in, as donors exchanged looks that said, this could get messy, the family realized the truth. The world had just flipped. The person they had humiliated wasn't fragile. She was powerful. And the most terrifying part wasn't her power. It was her control of it. Because when dignity reclaims its space, it doesn't need permission. It just stands. And the room stayed silent, waiting, as if the next breath belonged to her. And it did. Because what she chose to do next would decide who was begging, and who was walking away. They found her near the exit, just as the noise behind her began to swell again. Not the boy. Not the mother. The parents. Their steps were slower now. Careful. The kind of careful that comes after certainty has been shaken. The kind that says we no longer know where we stand. Their shoulders, once squared with confidence, were lowered. Their faces, once relaxed by power, were tight with calculation. The father spoke first. We're sorry, he said. The words fell flat, not because they weren't polite, but because they were late. They sounded rehearsed. Necessary. Like something practiced in the car ride over, just in case a situation ever required it. The mother stood beside him, hands clasped together like she was holding herself still. She didn't look up. When she spoke, her voice was smaller than it had been all night. We didn't know, she said. The woman stopped. Just for a moment. She turned slowly, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with a calm that felt heavier than either. The exit lights cast a soft glow behind her, outlining her silhouette like punctuation at the end of a sentence. She smiled. Not with triumph. With understanding. That's the problem, she said gently. You never thought you needed to. The words landed quietly, but they hit deep. Because they weren't an attack. They were a mirror. The father swallowed hard. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, realizing there was nothing left to explain. Nothing left to defend. The excuse had been exposed for what it was. Ignorance wasn't innocence. It was neglect. Behind them, the boy stood still. Silent now. Smaller. He didn't interrupt. He didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, like the world had finally pressed back. For the first time that night, he looked like a child who had learned something he couldn't unlearn. The woman glanced at him briefly. Not with anger. Not with blame. With clarity. I accept your apology, she said, turning her attention back to the parents. But forgiveness isn't about comfort. It's about accountability. The mother flinched. The word accountability sounded foreign in her mouth, like a language she had never been taught to speak. We'll make sure this never happens again, the father said quickly. We'll talk to him. We'll do better. The woman nodded once. I hope you do, she replied. Not because of who I am, but because of who he's becoming. That was the moment. Not when the apology was spoken, but when the lesson landed. She didn't wait for another response. She didn't linger to make them feel better. She didn't ask for the last word. She turned and walked toward the doors. Cameras followed instinctively, drawn by gravity, by consequence, by the quiet correction of history. No one clapped. No one cheered. That kind of respect doesn't need applause. The doors opened. And the night air rushed in. Cool. Clean. Light. It felt different out there. Like the world had exhaled with her. Like something heavy had been set down. She stepped outside and paused, just long enough to feel the ground under her feet. The city lights reflected in her eyes. Steady. Certain. Behind her, inside the ballroom, the noise slowly returned. Conversations restarted. Music rose again. But it wasn't the same room anymore. A family stood frozen near the exit. The father stared at the floor, replaying every moment where he had chosen silence over decency. The mother finally lifted her eyes, but the confidence she once wore so easily was gone. And the boy looked around at the room that had once felt like his playground. Now it felt like a classroom. A hard one. One that money couldn't buy his way out of. Because some lessons don't come with refunds. They come with memory. The woman walked down the steps, each one deliberate, unhurried. A driver opened the car door for her, but she didn't rush inside. She took one more breath of the night air. Inside that building, power had laughed at dignity. Outside, dignity had walked away intact. And that difference mattered. Because respect isn't owed upward. It's owed outward. To everyone. Not because of titles. Not because of wealth. Not because of influence. But because humanity is not a privilege. It's a responsibility. Back inside, people whispered about what they had seen. About what they had allowed. About what they might do differently next time. Some would forget by morning. Some would excuse themselves with comfort. But not all. Some lessons stick. Especially the ones that arrive without shouting. Especially the ones delivered by someone who refuses to beg for respect. The family would remember this night. They would remember the stain on a white suit that somehow never touched the woman wearing it. They would remember how quickly a room turned when a name was spoken. They would remember how silence stopped being safety the moment dignity stood up. And the boy would remember too. Not the laughter. Not the joke. But the moment his parents' voices softened. The moment power left their posture. The moment he realized the world doesn't belong to those who shout the loudest. It belongs to those who stand the firmest. That night didn't end with yelling. It ended with understanding. The kind that settles slowly, uncomfortably, but permanently. Because power that laughs at dignity will eventually kneel before it. And the most dangerous thing arrogance can do is assume it knows who holds the future. As the car pulled away, the city lights blurring past the window, one truth echoed through every polished hallway left behind. Never mistake silence for weakness. And never confuse wealth with worth.